Welcome back to Movie Talk. Today, big topic because Vanity Fair released their Star Wars 9 spread, and it's got so many new details in it. On top of that, we are covering the Wild Bunch remake, directed by Mel Gibson. Apparently, that has a bunch of really big names in talks to join the cast of the film. We're going to discuss both of those stories and then some, based on what you guys put in the live chat today. So chime in, tell us about the stories you want to hear more of. But for now, I got to introduce my panelists. It's John Rocha and Jeff Sneider.
Hello.
How goes it, guys?
Forget that Star Wars stuff. We got Westerns, a remake, The Outlaw. Let's do this.
Oh, okay. Star Wars.
All right, fine.
All right, let's jump into it because there are so many bullet point items we have to hit. So this all came from Vanity Fair, and Collider.com has broken down just about every single bit of those articles. So if you want to see every single thing that dropped in that big spread, go over there because they have a whole bunch of great links for you to check out. Right now, where to even begin with this? I want to start with the first look at Keri Russell's character, Zorii Bliss, because she looks phenomenal. I love that outfit. I love that photograph of her. And there's some really interesting things with this character. So based on the Vanity Fair article, it says that her character is found in the Thieves' Quarter on the snow-dusted world. I believe it's pronounced Kijimi? Is there an L in there?
Kijimi. I think,
Kijimi. Yeah. There's also a little quote that I want to read for you guys here. Ever since the balance of power in the galaxy was thrown off by the invasion of the First Order and the destruction of the New Republic, it has become very profitable for scoundrels to avoid picking a side during the escalating war between Leia's resistance and Kylo Ren's forces. Then I was busy looking around and seeing all the different interpretations on all of the things in this article here. And for this one in particular, I believe it was Comic Book Resources suggested that what could happen while the First Order and the Resistance are going at it is there's basically nobody policing the galaxy. So you have all of these bounty hunters and maybe folks like Zorii Bliss who are basically just free to do whatever they want with almost no restrictions around them. So that makes me even more excited to see what her character is up to because the possibilities are limitless. Is she going to be another DJ, or is she going to be someone you can trust and rely on? What is she doing? Does she have nefarious intentions? I'm really looking forward to learning more about that character.
I like that you mentioned DJ because she does look like a Daft Punk member there with that helmet, which is fantastic. Shout out to Michael Kaplan. What a fantastic costume designer. It looks like a mix between Daft Punk and Black Panther kind of vibe to it, which I really appreciate and love. And it's a badass way to introduce Keri Russell. And Matt Goldberg on Collider.com speculated that she could be the new Boba Fett for this trilogy, and I'd certainly like to put her in that contention as well, because it means possible we could get a spin-off. I think for me, what I jump into is the concept and the philosophy that was introduced here, which is always my gateway into Star Wars. Characters are nice, creatures are nice, but it's what it's about that really gets me. And J.J. Abrams spoke about what he sees the First Order's origins being, and that's going to be revealed in the film, it seems like. And he compared it to those Argentine Nazis who fled in World War II to Argentina, starting a Nazism as a new philosophy and putting it on the world. That's what he thinks the First Order kind of simulates. So I thought that was fantastic. And also this idea of this new generation picking up the mistakes of the past generation, trying to correct them without any real attachment to what happened, and then trying to be worthy of what those sacrifices were made of the generations before so they can walk into a new Star Wars. And all of that really excites me
philosophy-wise. There's a quote for that that's well worth reading right now, and it's Rise of Skywalker will not long for the past. They're more about the promise of the future with the young generation, this new generation, having to deal with all the debt that has come before. And Abrams also said that this film isn't just going to feel like a conclusion to this new trilogy. It's going to feel like a conclusion to a 9-film trilogy, which is super big, especially if you've seen all 9 films.
Which I haven't, as a matter of fact. I never saw The Phantom Menace, and I never saw Attack of the Clones.
Wow.
But I did like Revenge of the Sith.
But you've seen The Insider. I don't understand.
Yes, I really liked Revenge of the Sith, and I really liked Return of the Jedi. That may have been my favorite of the original trilogy. I was a big Jabba the Hutt guy. So I just believe in Star Wars thirds, in the trilogy cappers, so to speak. And I like the darkness that I see in these photos. I'm not sure if these are like staged photo shoots or if some of this was like Annie Leibovitz, like capturing moments during filming, that kind of stuff. Obviously, everybody seems kind of posed, but I don't know. There's just a certain darkness to the quality of these images that gets me excited.
There's a real darkness to that one of Hux and Richard E. Grant's character. So Richard E. Grant's character is named Allegiant General Pride, and I know there was a lot of talk about him possibly being Hux's father, which isn't really possible if you read the Phasma book. It doesn't line up whatsoever. So
read the Phasma book.
It's actually very good, and especially when Phasma is very much underserved in the films.
Yeah.
If you learn a little bit about her backstory in that book, it's really fascinating to see where she wound up. But in this particular image, I do wonder if this is kind of like a fatherly vibe they have going on here, because Hux is not a leader whatsoever.
Yeah.
And now that Snoke is completely, out of the picture as far as him basically puppeteering Hux and Kylo, and it's basically Hux and Kylo side by side with Kylo bullying him around, he's going to need some I guess like an authority figure to help guide him, and maybe that's where Richard E. Grant is going to step in.
He's almost got a Grand Moff Tarkin vibe to that shot. The military look is very pristine, very precise. Corners are there. He's got a very gaunt look, very different from what we saw in Can You Ever Forgive Me? So I love that they're letting Richard E. Grant kind of spread his dramatic wings a little bit in this. It looks fantastic from that picture. But I also want to give a shout out to Naomi Aki, her character here, getting a shot of her on that horse. You talk about dark. There is darkness, but it's very epic, these shots. Everything is going to happen. It's going to end here, and it's going to be very big. And seeing her astride that animal with Finn is just fantastic.
It is a beautiful shot. Here's a question right now from the live chat. Kyle Johnson is asking, do you guys think the Knights of Ren will be fighting alongside Kylo or against him?
It's a good question. Now, Vanity Fair had to do a retraction from their original post when they said or speculated that Kylo was fighting the Knights of Ren in the trailer, and then they took it back and said, well, just the Knights of Ren are in the movie. That was our fault, blah, blah, blah. So they may have spoiled something big there, which I hope they haven't. But if they have, then it's a heartbreaking thing to get spoiled because you want to know.
I know.
I don't want redemption.
I know we don't want anything spoiled, but I find that way more interesting if maybe he is fighting against the Knights of Ren. It just adds a much richer scenario to their involvement here, and also the backstory too. And it would just add a whole nother layer, because at this point in time, we have our flashback and we're basically thinking, where did they go? Assuming that Kylo is still connected to them whatsoever. But if they did diverge along the way, and if they're going after Kylo, there's some major event that happened in between that I'd be eager to know more of.
True.
Who do we think dies in this movie? That's what I want to know.
Lando.
We can speculate all day long about the Avengers. Like
Lando, C-3PO. I think C-3PO, in the article, it's kind of buried there that Anthony Daniels reveals that C-3PO participates in this battle in a way that he's never participated before. And Anthony Daniels reveals also that he had trouble saying that first line after he read the script. Why? Because it might be the first line where he is walking towards his death, the death of C-3PO, which would be very overwhelming, I think, for any actor to conceive of.
I don't think Oscar Isaac makes it out of this movie alive.
You think Poe dies?
Yeah, I just have a feeling. I don't know. What about you?
I don't like the idea of C-3PO dying. I
didn't like the idea of Solo dying, but it happened.
We've experienced it enough. I mean, obviously, I'm just saying this as a fan. There's ways for them to justify anything they want in the story if the script is there. But from this perspective at this point in time, I think I'm too sensitive to lose any more original trilogy characters. And also, if you want to have stakes, you can't have every single new character make it out of whatever happens in Episode 9 free and clear.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be a new character, whether it's Finn or Poe.
What if it's Rose?
Maybe
she has
totally possible.
She has shown the desire to go headstrong and fight and defend and sacrifice, and so she's a warrior.
I just think we're entering this batch of movies with Daisy, with John Boyega, and Oscar Isaac, and I think one of them will fall.
Wow.
I do wonder if, let's say, one of the droids go, if it is C-3PO or maybe R2-D2, if it winds up being a situation kind of like a brief spoiler alert for, I guess, Solo, if you haven't seen it yet. Right. If it's more like an L3 thing where the droid is repurposed for another use in maybe a future movie or TV series. And that's the way their vibe carries on.
Yeah, the article says that we're finally going to get this, they speculate that we're finally going to get this end of the Jedi versus Sith battle, millennia-long battle. So if this ends here, in a way, C-3PO's service is done because he's been the chronicler of this, quietly been the chronicler of these tales. And so I would not be surprised if in some way he passes, and that would be pretty heartbreaking for a lot of people.
The way you just phrased that makes me think that this movie is going to end with like C-3PO closing a book in front of a burning fire or something and being like, that's how the Skywalker saga ended.
Yeah, it'll say Song of Ice and Fire, so it'll be super meta.
Well, that went too far.
Spoiler.
Here's a question from Dan Allen in the chat. He's asking, what is going on with Luke? That's the question we should be asking. Any predictions for Luke and how they bring him back here?
I still think it's a flashback as what we saw in The Force Awakens. I think it's just a flashback with R2-D2. We get that shot in this article as well. I don't think he has to be a large part of this. Him voicing over the trailer, there are lessons that he still has to learn. So to me, I think that he's more going to be a guide for Rey more than anything else, like Obi-Wan was even after he passed. Just a voice.
Come on, Jeff. Prediction
Try.
time.
Pass.
Oh,
boo.
if you had to just pull something out of thin air, what would it be?
Something called a Force Ghost?
Ew.
I don't know. I don't even know what that is.
No, well, I mean, that is a fair assumption, and that's probably what I would lean towards rather than him coming back in the flesh and actually having survived what happened in The Last Jedi, because I also don't want to take away from that moment in The Last Jedi. I mean, that is what happens. Sadly, the character passes, and he passes by doing something to support the Resistance overall, so I think that is over and done with, but the Force has a habit of bringing people back to guide others, and that's really what this specific trilogy and all 9 films are really about. It's about not necessarily killing the past and letting it die, but learning from past mistakes. And even though it's not specifically about Luke, when JJ talks about it in this article, he does reference that often, that this is basically all about, here's a great quote here. It's the sins of the father, and it's the wisdom and the accomplishments of those who did great things, but it's also those who committed atrocities, and the idea that this group is up against this unspeakable evil, and are they prepared? Are they ready? What have they learned from before? It's less about grandeur, and it's less about restoring an old age. It's more about preserving a sense of freedom and not being one of the oppressed. So they basically need to find that freedom by using everything, good and bad, that happened before them. So
can you really trust what J.J. Abrams says? He says he was stunned that Star Wars was trending on Twitter.
That's a fair point.
He was stunned that he was trending on Twitter, not Star Wars itself. I think he was stunned that he was
me? J.J. Abrams, the director of Star Wars, trending on Twitter? Get at it.
He pulled that Taylor Swift. Who, me? You like me? Can I throw one last thing in?
Yes, please.
The Princess Leia stuff was really great. General Leia stuff was really moving for me to read. I almost got emotional reading it. What JJ was able to do to go find old footage, cut scenes, and then relit the actors playing against probably someone who was a stand-in for General Leia, but having Billie Lourd come in and her character, who's obviously Carrie Fisher's daughter, having her come in and have scenes with her. I think people are going to snap in half in the theater when they see more footage than they anticipated of General Leia. That's really going to bring an incredible of emotional weight to this film as well.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
All right, guys, before we move on to topic number 2, which of course is that Wild Bunch remake, we got to tell you about some stuff you could watch right here on the Collider Video YouTube channel. Check it out.
Hi, I'm Amy Dallin, one of the hosts of Collider Heroes, and starting right now, you can catch our show at a new time and format. We're coming at you Tuesday nights with a new shorter Collider Heroes and a longer Collider Heroes podcast, where Coy and I are gonna talk your ears off. You already know that's coming. So make sure to go to YouTube, subscribe, and find us on the Collider Heroes podcast feed for all of that sweaty goodness.
In addition to Heroes, we also have 2 new movie reviews up for you today. One is a review of Aladdin, and the other is of Brightburn. So 2 completely different types of movies for you to check out this weekend. Go watch those reviews now. Actually, not now. Watch it after the show. Thanks. All right, let's move on to story number 2. So we're going to give you an update that came from Deadline right now about the Wild Bunch remake. According to Deadline, Michael Fassbender, Jamie Foxx, and Peter Dinklage are in early talks to join this remake. And of course, it's of the 1969 Sam Peckinpah Western about a group of aging outlaws looking for one last score. Mel Gibson will direct from a script he wrote with Brian Bagby. Warner Brothers is financing and releasing this film. The deals aren't done yet, but Deadline sources say that it is expected to shoot in the fall. Rocha.
Yeah.
our resident Western expert. What do you think of this? Does this have a chance of coming back and capturing a wide audience?
I hope so. Because if you remember 1969, what was going on in the country, Wild Bunch is an extension of that. It's a neo-Western exploring this idea of what heroes actually did and this blurred line between heroes and villains, and that even people who do commit crimes have a chance to redeem themselves against an even greater evil. So you see that going on nowadays, this kind of more greater moral world we're living in. And so I think there's a lot to explore again with this Peckinpah film. And look, Gibson is essentially Peckinpah, a very controversial filmmaker who's consumed with violent imagery in his films. So the connections here are incredible. You throw in Fassbender, you throw in Dinklage. All of this excites me on so many levels. And if you get the right crew of Wild Bunch around them, it will be fantastic. And I personally am looking forward to this version of the Wild Bunch because Mel's not going to pull any damn punches.
I really like this cast. I love the trio. I haven't quite warmed up to the idea of Mel Gibson directing it. I mean, given everything he has said and done, it is extremely difficult for, I think, very reasonable reasons to not get super excited when he gets yet another project in his lap and he gets to have all of these opportunities that other people out there don't. But if I'm just isolating it to this trio, hope it works out, hope it winds up being true, because I'm a big fan of Fassbender. I feel like it's been a long time since I've seen him do something really big and something really successful like that. So I hope this works out for him.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I don't know about Mel Gibson, the person, but Mel Gibson, the filmmaker, is terrific.
Yep.
I mean, Hacksaw Ridge was really good. I think Apocalypto is a masterpiece. And I think he has a sequel to The Passion of the Christ coming out. So this has obviously been a big week for Mel Gibson with Cannes and all the film market stuff. He signed on to 3 different movies, one with Shia LaBeouf, Rothschild, one with Kate Bosworth called Force of Nature, and one Fat Man, which he's going to play Santa Claus. And there's an assassin trying to kill Santa Claus. So those are 3 indies. This is a studio project, with Warner Brothers, so it's going to have a decent budget. I imagine it'll be along the lines of The Magnificent Seven, maybe not quite as high since Denzel and Chris Pratt are maybe a little bit of a different tier. But you mentioned Fassbender, like. I can see him in this type of role, and him working with Mel Gibson I think will be good, but like, what has this guy's career, like what has happened to this guy's career? Have you guys been paying attention the last few years to where he's been?
Sure.
A little bit, yeah. I mean I found what they've done with this character in the X-Men film franchise to be fairly disappointing, but then again, I feel like that franchise has lost a good deal of steam since Days of Future Past. It's not just him, but most of the other movies that he's been in that have really excited me, they're just not necessarily like star power movies.
He just seems like a guy who needs to find a new agent, because like The Snowman is now like a meme.
Oh my God,
that's a meme.
Well, that was,
he did a forgettable Terrence Malick movie. Assassin's Creed wasn't good. The indies that he is choosing to do, Trespassed Against Us, Macbeth, I couldn't get through. The Light Between Oceans was a DreamWorks movie nobody saw.
Oh wow!
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Like. Even Alien Covenant, which I like, and I like his David in those Alien movies. I don't think anyone like loved Covenant. You know what I mean?
He's picking an unusual path, that's for sure. It's certainly not a successful path overall, but people do still respect his talent.
He's a great actor.
That's what I'm saying, to the point that he's being considered for something like this, certainly. So people always come back to him. It could not be his agent. It could be just him. That these are the projects that appeal to him, and he likes these kind of weird taste, weird films, and explores them. I think you could see that in shades of his performance of David. He's got an affinity to play these kind of weird avant-garde characters that test your understanding or patience with watching something on screen like that. And I would push back on the Macbeth. I loved that Macbeth and loved him in that Macbeth.
Interesting.
Because it's a very unusual interpretation of Macbeth with no comedy relief, which Macbeth has.
I want the actor who I thought was amazing in Shame and got an Oscar nomination for Steve Jobs.
It's about the material.
12 Years a Slave. Like, I'm surprised that Hollywood's not giving him better material, more opportunities.
You can go back to Frank and Slow West.
Slow West,
you definitely love Slow West, don't you? Yeah.
Yes.
I quite like that one too.
There are a couple decent indies from 5 years ago or whatever, but I don't know. I just feel like he's dropped off in the last couple of years. Like I used to hear his name for big project after big project, and that momentum seems to have like gone away.
Well,
so hopefully he recaptures it.
Maybe this will come together. Maybe it'll reinvigorate his career.
Yeah.
If not, there could always be something else that we're not aware of right now too. But
and
good things for
Dinklage
him.
hot off Game of Thrones is a big get for this.
Well, I'm assuming that's going to be a big thing that we're probably going to be be covering often. Now that Game of Thrones is off of their calendars, all of those actors should be picking up projects left and right. I certainly hope so, because I do know what winds up happening when big shows like that go away is maybe a couple of them will take off. Yeah. And I think that a couple of them already have, but I just hope that some of the more supporting characters don't get left in the dust. Like, I want to see more stuff for Conleth Hill. Please cast him in things.
Conleth Hill would be great.
Yeah. All right. We'll see what happens with that. Right now, we are moving into your live chat questions. This first one here is from J. Scott For Real, who's asking, what regular Nolan players would you like to see return, but to play a character entirely outside of their usual wheelhouse? So this question pertains to the new Nolan movie, which we just found out is called Tenet. And just so you guys know, Tenet by definition, because this title doesn't really tell us any specifics about the story, but the definition of the word might help you out here. A principle or belief, especially one of the main principles of a religion or philosophy. So again, it probably doesn't clear anything up, but maybe it puts your mind down a certain path.
I would go with Tom Hardy on this one. I'd love to see Tom Hardy playing something outside of his what was the word they used? Wheelhouse, right? In that he would play a guy who you could understand.
Oh, God.
So you just went all roundabout way just to bash Tom Hardy.
Have you ever seen Taboo? I watched all of
Taboo's incredible.
I watched all of Taboo with subtitles because I could not hear a thing he was saying.
That's fair.
Yeah, that would be outside of his wheelhouse. So.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I would like, who I haven't heard about in a little bit of time. So I would like to see Joseph do something kind of out of the box, because I loved him in Inception. So I would love to see him do something out of the box with Nolan as well. And even Anne Hathaway, right, with Interstellar. Anne Hathaway, what did we just see her in that Hustle movie that no one's going to see? So like having her jump into something that Nolan could use really. Ocean's 8, even in Ocean's 8, she is part of the crew. She's not leading the crew like Sandra. So I think an Anne Hathaway role that kind of out of the box would be fun to explore with Nolan.
It is interesting, the whole international espionage thing, because it's like John David Washington sort of went like undercover in Black Klansman. Elizabeth Debicki sort of did something similar in Widows. You know, like these people have experience infiltrating.
I do
places.
love the idea of the two of them and Robert Pattinson leading this thing. And speaking of people who often work with Nolan, Michael Caine was also added to the cast as well. And who doesn't want more Michael Caine in their movies?
That's right.
Michael Caine was actually one of the first interviews in my career I ever did. And it's like, you just start like up here, and I had to meet him at a restaurant for coffee, and I was just like schwitzing. I was so nervous. And he is wonderful and delightful, just like he is.
Did you
in
call him
his movies.
Sir? I'll tell you something, Perry.
I was probably scared to like utter a title. You know, when you're like, especially when you walk into an interview room at a junket and you don't know whether you should call someone by their first name casually or their full name, or like Mr. or Miss so-and-so. So I probably just went, hello, it's so nice to meet you, or something. And
yeah, like when I met Spielberg, I was like, Stevie, Bubby, what's going
All right, let's make one more question happen here. Let's go for a box office question. This one comes from Thelonious, who's asking, will Brightburn crack the top 5 at the box office? It's going to be a close call.
What we got? Aladdin, we got Avengers.
We've got Aladdin, Brightburn, and Booksmart are the new releases, and then there's also Pikachu, Avengers, and John Wick 3 at the top. The Hustle was still in the game last weekend.
Oh, I say yes. I say Brightburn gets in. I don't know what it's tracking for, but the reviews have been mixed positive.
Tough because it's a horror. It's kind of horror, so I want to give it some love, but it's a superhero horror, so I don't know what the taste for that is. I want to say 6 or 7 in my mind, but wouldn't be surprised. Booksmart might surprise.
I'm going a little higher, and I'm not sad. I'm sad about Booksmart because I don't think Booksmart is cracking the top 5, which is just awful, because that movie is so delightful and it's great, and I think it should. But I think Brightburn actually might be a little bit of like a surprise hit based on how much money I think they spent on that movie. Yeah. I think the high concept of it all is going to be a major draw. What concerns me for Brightburn is the second weekend drop off, because I think this movie is going to divide people big time. Either you're into that super bleak dark take or you are not, and that's what's going to happen.
We have Ma next weekend too, another sort of horror movie appealing to genre fans.
We've got a lot of horror coming up.
I think Brightburn could open anywhere between 3, 4, and 5. Yeah.
I think at this point I'd probably
double digits.
I think I'm going a little higher. I think it's going to wind up popping and coming closer to like 12 or 13 and taking 5.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's going to do double digits for sure.
Okay. There you go. Those are our Brightburn box office predictions, and that's where we're ending this episode of Movie Talk. As always, thank you guys for watching. Jeff, Rocha, thank you so much for being here today. Adam, you are the best. Thank you for all your hard work as always. Guys, please like and share this episode of Collider Movie Talk. Always tune in 3 p.m. PT Live for a brand new episode 5 days a week. We also exist in podcast form as well, so be sure to check us out on the podcast feed too. And guess what? You're going to tune in tomorrow, 3 p.m. PT Live for a brand new episode.